Hi, my name is Sarah Nesbitt. I'm a minister and I'm a writer. And as you can tell, I'm pretty undeniably Caucasian as well. Our nation's blown up in the last week and a half since the unjustified lynching of George Floyd at the hands of a Minneapolis police officer. Um, Peaceful protests, Black Lives Matter protests have happened all over our country, not just in major cities like DC and Philadelphia and Los Angeles, but in small towns too. Um, Not only have these protests been happening here in America, but they are happening all over the world. Um, I saw a picture this week of thousands thronging streets in Paris and London in unity with the Black Lives Matters ideology in the group. Um, so for 400 years, um, people of color, indigenous people and African Americans especially, have been oppressed in America, and it came to a head, and people are starting to notice and say, you know what, it's done. It's time for this to stop. And that's been the root of these peaceful protests. There's been writing alluding to they have nothing to do with the protest. Those are opportunists, those are far left groups, far right groups. They have nothing to do with standing up for justice for African American fellow citizens. It's not just African Americans, though, although their lives are certainly the ones we are looking at right now. Other people of color have also been oppressed here in America. Just it's only been a month or two when Asians were being attacked because of the quote Chinese virus, and they too have faced bigotry and racism. White people have done a lot of talking. You can see forget people saying, you know what, maybe we need to change some systemic racism problems here in America. Instead, is looting. How dare people loot? Well, it's time for we white people, for us white people, to shut up for a little bit, to sit down, take a long pause in our talking, and open our ears to hear the stories of Black people here in America and even around the world. I've heard stories in the last week. I've heard one about a young lady who had applied for a scholarship, filled out all the paperwork, more than met the qualifications, had more than earned it, extremely well qualified for it. And when she went to receive her scholarship, they wanted to deny it to her because of the color of her skin. She was Black. I heard another story about a young man who had probably the best day of his entire baseball playing career as a youth baseball player get tainted by a coach calling him the derogatory boy. So we're going to be quiet now. And we are going to listen to their voices. I call it the Voices Project. And I am going to collect and curate a collection of stories of racism and oppression from African American citizens here in America. I'm inviting other people of color, indigenous peoples, Latin American peoples, Asian Americans, anyone who wants to also be heard to submit their stories too. I'm merely here as the amplifier. If you think about it, like you go to a concert, sure, there's an amp. Helps you hear the guitarist, helps you hear the keyboardist, helps you hear the singer, but you're not paying attention to the amp. You're paying attention to the message of the music. I'm here as the amplifier. All I'm doing is making sure people hear the stories and hear the message. I'm going to post a link to an article I wrote about the Voices Project, so you can find out more about it. There's also a link in there to my email address, and I invite you to send me your stories. I promise to treat them with respect, with dignity, and with honor, because your story deserves to be told, and I am willing to be quiet and let your story be heard.